Hi, hello. So, in my last video, I said my next update would be after I talked with the psychologist who does meetings with the nurse practitioner clinic that I've been attached to. And so here I am. It didn't go as expected, and I don't know how to feel about it. So, after I met with my assigned nurse practitioner, she said that we'd pursue getting an autism assessment before trying medicated routes like she might normally, which I was very grateful for because I'm certain it's not just generalized anxiety, but didn't want to scare her off by asserting my self diagnosis too much and whipping out my own condemning markup of the DSM 5. Um, Joan said that that process, though, to get an assessment would be quite a while. Most of the assessment clinics are closer to Toronto, which is quite the trip for my constitution, anyway, and their availability is full for many, many months out. So I was receptive to start with me talking to a psychologist, which Joan suggested. I thought that it might streamline the assessment recommendation. It seems obvious to me that I'm autistic, if not more, by this point, because I've been down this rabbit hole for a year and a half now. But I know that traits of neurodivergence isn't something the average nurse practitioner is equipped to recognize, and it's not their place to speculate. That's why we're passed on to field professionals for the assessment. Even people in that niche of neurology can struggle to accurately recognize things. People get misdiagnosed all the time. Traits get categorized as personal failings. Compulsions of OCD are labeled as bipolar instead. Autism can present the same as CPTSD. It's all complicated and there's much overlap. But I thought if I talked with the psychologist and it was obvious to them through my description that I have been and am severely limited in lifestyle by how low capacity to handle the drain of otherwise mundane tasks that I am, as well as being socially stunted, that not only would they back up the pursuit of an assessment, but hopefully pass along to my nurse practitioner that trying various medication isn't going to cure. My nurse practitioner had said that the psychologist only takes a couple slots to meet their clinic's patients every month, so that too might take several months before we'd have a meeting. But to my surprise, I got a call from my clinic not long after my first meeting with my nurse ever, and they told me there had been a cancellation. Would I like to meet with the psychologist that week? And I said yes, because the opportunity seemed stupid to pass up. But I won't lie that the suddenness was stressful. I usually need a lot of time to process things changing or going to appointments in general, and this was happening a lot faster than I expected. But that's a good thing. I'm eager to get an assessment, so I can't balk at the timeline. So I dutifully spent the week mentally preparing. I didn't know what the psychologist would ask me about, or rather, what questions they might ask as a way to get me to divulge other things for them to assess. Like, you don't ask someone, hey, do you have internalized misogyny straight up? You determine that based on their response to a question of whether they think men should provide equal labor around the household, etc. I had no idea what the psychologist would ask, so I was really nervous. I spent the few days beforehand ruminating on my life so I'd have good, quick responses for her. Like, how old was I when this or that happened? How would I describe each of my parents? My history with friendships? How I feel about where I am in my life right now? I assumed that they were going to ask pretty open ended questions, which I'm really bad at those because it always feels like there's too much that could count as an answer and then too much context to answer that with the without babbling. So I tried rehearsing and like narrowing down on what entry points they'd probably want from me, or mean to invoke. I revised and rewrote the document that I have going right now about my history and presentation of autism. It's currently 24 pages long, and I added subtitle tabs for chronology and to keep relevant anecdotes pinned under the applicable trait. I think it's great. I'm doing a very thorough. I'm doing a good job. I had that document open in one computer monitor and the video call browser open on the other. I was seated and waiting for the appointment over an hour beforehand. I'm not going to tell you exactly how long. Um, I did the test call that they have to make sure that my audio worked okay and that I looked presentable in my environment through the webcam. I was so nervous and sweating, pressure stimming where I'd like to push my legs up against my desk all the time, which ends up bruising, and picking at my skin. And even though I know it's weird, I had a blanket to keep me comforted because I want one on every second of the day. But I was there and I was as ready as I was going to be. I was prepared. I was ready for this. The psychologist was a couple minutes behind the appointed hours mark, which is to be expected. Not everyone else is going to be sitting there waiting as long as I do for things that a normal person would actually be there on the hour mark, you know what I mean? So, I was feeling pretty good as far as first impressions go, like both her and me. She was immediately professional in how she spoke, but it was also a little more casual than I expected with the vibe. The video window was punched in so that there wasn't really much to see of her more than her head and shoulders, and the background wasn't some intimidating office filled with books or diplomas. It was just a white wall and a little knickknack was hanging in the corner. After getting on call, she kind of excused herself to reposition the camera and her seat a bit, which took the scary immediacy out of it. I was worried she'd jump straight into trying to pinpoint an edible complex or something. So, all social systems go so far. She asked how I was doing, and because I'd spent the last day trying to drill into myself the mantra to be fully honest and not just mask and minimize things, I told her the truth. That actually, I wasn't doing that great physically that day. Because it's kind of weird, but if I start with masking, I wasn't going to be able to get out of it. So I had to force myself to say the things. um, as it just so happens, I just had my first day of the work season and I got a lot of bug bites on my hands, arms, and neck. I react really poorly to them. Or rather, my immune system overreacts to them. And it was so bad that I was actually unable to fully close my hands. So it was so swollen. I may or may not show you an image. I don't know. Trigger warning. um, but yeah, it was so swollen. So I told her that I was probably going to go to a walk-in clinic after our meeting, but I couldn't risk missing the meeting. This was important to me. I wanted her to know that and that I respected that. She sympathized with my physical discomfort and we carried on, and I confirmed that mentally though I'm doing fine aside from being nervous for the appointment. Then she asked me what I wanted to talk with her about. I wasn't expecting to lead the direction of our meeting, but I was prepared to explain why I was here in case she just wanted me to reiterate it so that we were on the same page. I'm sure that people lie or get there indirectly because they don't want to talk about what their real problem is with someone else first. Like how people will go to donate blood because they actually secretly want an HIV test. So, surely my nurse practitioner had briefed the psychologist in some way as to why we were meeting, or we wouldn't be meeting, right? In my preparation for the appointment, I'd read a few blogs about what I should expect when talking to a psychologist about neurodivergence, and I hoped my experience would be like they'd outlined, that the priority would be affirmative care, to question me for the sake of clarity and not to dismiss my lived experience. I was really banking on this interaction being the first time that I could talk with someone, a professional, who would understand the nuance between being antisocial and being socially inhibited, between being a bit anxious and the experience of autism. I told her I was self diagnosed and that I thought she was going to ask me questions about it so we might move forward with the assessment process quicker because of how it affects my lifestyle. And well, that's apparently not what was going to happen. The psychologist informed me that she doesn't deal with neurodivergence at all. So I didn't know what to say then, besides a disappointed, oh, because, like, what now? We really didn't even sit in silence for a moment. Like, she's a professional. She doesn't exactly get stumped. It's her job to keep things rolling. So she went on to explain what her mission was, or what she understood her mission to be, which was to determine whether I was safe, meaning within my own head and in a safe place physically in my life. Was I a harm to myself or anyone else, or was anyone else a harm to me? And I answered no, and included a little bit of the messy honesty that I had self harmed before in my life, but I'm not compelled to now. My life is as good as it's ever been. But seeing as she's not tuned into neurodivergent nuance, I wasn't gonna muddy the waters by trying to explain that self harm can happen during a meltdown sometimes. I hurt myself a little bit because that'd need understanding of what that means for me, besides just being upset. I wasn't gonna say technically I self harm all the time with my negative stimming because she's not here for that either. And that's the stuff that I wanted to talk about. That's what I need help with, or at least to talk with someone about. And so she just wrapped it up, saying sorry. That's all she was looking for. If I needed help from a mental crisis or help getting out of a dangerous situation. But since I was good and she didn't deal with neurodivergence, then that was all there was to do, all there was to say. She was genuinely sympathetic because clearly I'd come here looking for something that wasn't there. I tried to hold it in, but she could probably see it on my face that I was thrown off by the news, the change of expectations. My webcam isn't good enough quality that I think she really noticed that a couple tears got out. I was trying so fucking hard to keep it together, to keep my face neutral, but it was probably pretty obvious. I told her I was sorry for wasting her time, and she could definitely hear it in my voice. My throat was full, the way that it gets sometimes whenever I'm upset. But I tried to talk anyway. Honestly, I felt so fucking stupid. and and she was kind enough to say that she hopes I have luck with my pursuit in getting an assessment other elsewhere, and that I certainly better go get some relief from the bug bites swelling on my hands with my afternoon instead. So I thanked her and we hung up. And the whole thing lasted about 8 minutes. I curled up in a ball and cried for a little while, but like honestly not that long. I it didn't really sink in, or I was trying not to let it sink in because I understood no harm had been done. Just no good had been done either. I'd put so much preparation and weight on this meeting, and it had ended up being nothing but unnecessary and confusing. Like, what had gotten lost in translation between me and my nurse practitioner and the psychologist. The part that hurt the most was kind of how ready I was to talk about things. After meeting my nurse, Joan, I was worried about the misconception of neurotypical explanations, like how she kept circling back to generalized anxiety without the understanding that anxiety is just a symptom of a life lived masking. I thought the psychologist would have enough knowledge of different neurotypes to parse out what's an understandable, possibly autistic response, or what's actually CPTSD, and what's an approach to a problem that we can work on with those things in mind. I don't know. I didn't expect her to be an expert, but like, if you're in the field of talking with people and understanding how they work to be able to help them, I assumed that it'd require a rough skill to know how different processes affect experience and responses. And I I guess I'm expecting too much. It was only recently that masking was understood and able to apply to autistic people who may pass, who can function enough to get by, to still qualify under the DSM 5. So, but like, if I'd come to that meeting earlier in my life and I told her no, I am not in a safe place, but all the factors around me limiting and confining me to those conditions were caused and exacerbated by my being autistic because they were, how much help could I really receive? It'd be surface level because it'd never be able to address the fundamental difference between how I'd gotten there, the relationships I had, and the few options available to me, what I'm capable of without judgment. But I guess that's the point, right? I know this already, or I should. It happened to my ex, how he could go to emerge and even be the stereotypical white autistic boy displaying class 2 traits and still completely get passed over and not given any kind of recognition. So I shouldn't be surprised that the only people that I'm really going to manage to have a deeper discussion with about my autism, potential autism, self diagnosis, would be the people capable of validating it. Since self diagnosing, I have felt such an odd mix of finally having found a community of people I belong to and getting hit with the weight of how alone and misunderstood I've always been, may always be, by strangers. I wish I could talk with anyone about it. I wish that I could have spent time with that psychologist, but I just also really didn't have the energy in me to bridge that gap in understanding between what it might seem like I need to her and what I actually need. In case you're wondering, no, after that botched meeting, I didn't end up going to see someone about my swollen hands and bug bite welts. But it wasn't for a lack of trying. I pushed my emotions down and I got dressed and I got in the car and my partner drove me to town. I tried the walk in clinic in our town, but it's by appointment only, apparently, so I was met with a locked door. And I didn't want to walk into my personal clinic and see if Joan had a slot open that afternoon because I just couldn't conceptualize talking to her about the meeting with the psychologist, knowing that she'd ask. I hadn't processed it yet myself. I felt like I'd failed somehow. And maybe I was a little mad, too, that something had gotten lost in translation because I'd been so very clear about what I wanted and needed, I thought. So instead of seeing anybody about my physical problems, I bought a different brand of antihistamines that don't seem to work and some gin and went home. But I tried really hard that night to treat myself better than I would have. Before my self diagnosis, this would have been spiraling. It'd feel like, and it kind of does feel like, I'm stupid and this was all my fault and I should feel bad about wasting people's time for even asking for help and failing at getting it, but it's okay. These things are going to happen. Even if I can't figure out why at this moment, I can now expect that they will, which makes it better, easier, kind of softer. Communication is allowed to be hard. Autism is a social developmental disability, whether I want to think about it that way outright or not. I am limited, I do struggle, and that's okay. I will keep trying, and I will let you know how it goes the next time I talk to my nurse practitioner, because it seems like maybe we're not on the same page after all. I should look at this as a learning experience, a road bump, but not a hang up, you know? So I'll see you in that next video.